Okay, so now we have another metaphor that's worth looking at. This is a good one, because the reason I like this is a fairly complicated, or it appears to be fairly complicated metaphor, and is fairly typical of the kind of stuff that I see working with clients. The ones of the guy floating around in empty space, or the really abstract ones, aren't the run-of-the-mill ones. This I would see as a run-of-the-mill, but it can appear very complicated if you're new to this kind of work. So what I'll do is I'll pull up on the screen now the original drawing that was sent over to me, and then what I have over here is my rendition for my point of reference. So to the left is walls of a cave. On the walls there are some flaming fire torches, and they always amuse me in the movies, because whenever they're in a darkened place, in a cave, out in the wilderness somewhere, there's always just these flaming torches just lying around that they can just suddenly light by dipping them in the fire, and suddenly they burn forever as they walk through the caves. I've never quite understood where all these fire torches are left just lying around the place. I've never seen one in my life. But anyway, on the left there are fire torches on the walls. It's night time, so everything is very dark. In the background there is darkness. To the right there is a pool of water, which is clear blue-green, and it's lit from within. Key detail there for us. And the banks of the pool are cool, damp grass. Now the person appears to be standing on some mushroomy type structures. They're essentially pillars of rock topped with soil and mossy cushioned grass. They are moving forwards across these three pillars, and they would have to jump to be able to move forward. And as they move forward, the pillar is crumbling away as they move forwards. So there's a whole load of stuff in here that we can look at. The support, if we start off with some idioms, they're very much in the dark. There are some points of light for them, but we don't know how long that illumination is going to last. Whilst the person is in the dark, they're not bright enough to actually illuminate the situation themselves. And they're very much dependent on some very ancient and antiquated forms of enlightenment. So this is not something that is sort of up-to-date, modern, high-tech. This is a person who relies on ancient and old forms of enlightenment. That's the torches for you. As they try and move forwards, they're losing support. So for them, there's no going back, and that's quite important for them. This is a person who has to keep moving forwards. They probably have to take a leap of faith. They have to make jumps. They have to move quickly. That if they hesitate, if they procrastinate, if they wait around, this will be their downfall. This is going to be the end of them, and it will bring them down. We only know the pool of water that is below them. We don't know what else is down there. So the overall support of the environment is largely unknown. This person could lose their current support and end up basically going under. So they would fall, they would go over the edge, they'd go under, and that would be the end of them. So their downfall is likely unless they change their position. But of course, the action of changing position is the very thing that contributes to the crumbling support that they've got. So there's a particular weird relationship here. Their support is running out, and they have to keep moving forwards. So for them, there's no standing around, just keep moving forwards. What else we got? These mushroomy type structures, that catches my attention. I haven't got any idioms for that. The pillars, they've got a pillar of support. Well, they've got multiple pillars of support. These are very sort of, they're nicely cushioned, of course, not with royal cushions, but with very natural type material. So it's natural for them to be there, and it makes it a little bit more comfortable environment, despite the fact there's some inherent dangers. So that's what I've got in terms of my immediate idioms for this particular metaphor. Let's just have a look now at the structuring of this. So these things that they're standing on, these are rocky pillars, they're capped with this sort of cushion of moss within a cave which has forms of illumination, and there's a pool of water that is lit from within. Where are they going? Okay, so they're in a position that if they change their position, they're going to buy themselves a bit of time. But I'm going to suggest, it's just implied here, that as they move forward, these continue to crumble. There's 3, I don't know how many of these are, maybe there's an infinite number of these things. I don't know. So, but what we know is, this is a game without end. And what is the game that they're playing? What is this game without end? It's that of status. The elevation here gives that away. So all elevation is status. And of course, what I'm going to say to you within the metaphors training is that all elevation metaphor is a substitution for growing up. So connected with every elevation metaphor, there's going to be a container metaphor. This is a substitution for another area of their life where they have failed to outgrow the situation. Elevation metaphors are typically how you make mum and dad proud. Because the other thing you were supposed to do growing up in that particular context hasn't happened. You're doing this instead because this appears to be easier. So essentially what we have here is one great big, very real appearing excuse to not grow up. This is elsewhere. This is how they maintain that point of immaturity somewhere else. We don't have access to that data based on this though. So they could keep going on a game without end, but the reality is it's not necessarily going to help them. All they're doing is changing their position for exactly the same position over again. Elevation is about status. This is about their position, and they're in an elevated position that's untenable. It's an elevated position that only has limited, time-limited support. So now the question is, why is that status so important to them? Probably because this status gives them this ancient illumination, this ancient enlightenment, this seeing the light from back in history. I would suspect that it's more likely to be about this ancient illumination and enlightenment, because it puts them closer to it. I've met these people quite a lot. They contact me periodically as well because they identify me as one of them. Because, hey, Andy, you're into occult stuff and mysticism. Hey, you do the Masonic stuff, so surely you must be really into my version of insanity. I'm not. I can tell you I'm not. And people like them to tell me, they send me this stuff over and all the rest of it, and it's usually just bonkers, medium, transmitted ancient knowledge from the planet of Gog across the star system through their favourite alien. This is the kind of stuff that people mistake for mysticism and ancient wisdom, and so on, or some crackpot religion. And they can be the enlightened one. They're the one who's closest to the source of that light. Now, they're in a cave system. We only know that because it's a cave wall is suggested here, which should give us the container. Now, we don't know whether this cave has an exit or not. It probably has, but we don't know that. It's not necessarily given in the metaphor. We also know it's nighttime as well as being dark. So this gives us the Hertz bias. We know with darkness in metaphor, the Hertz bias is signified. And those that don't know what the Hertz bias is, on the Metaphors of Movement page, and I'll put a link below here, there's an essay that I wrote about Hertz bias. It's the highly sensitive, highly clever person. In this case, that's the highly clever person that really needs to grow up and grow out of that cave. I think that's all I've really got for this one. The pool of illuminated water. Oh God, how many cliches do we want here? What is this? The pool of illumination, the water, the elixir, the water of life, the enlightened pool. I don't know. Comment section. You can probably think of some better idioms around this one than I can. It's only a finite sized pool. It has edges to it. So would the person be willing to actually step down from that position that they're in? Do they need to become a lot brighter themselves so they become the source of illumination? Or are they going to be relying on these flaming torches? Flaming torches. If you've got anything else to add to this one, do please stick them in there. What would I do? What would I do with this person? Not a lot, to be honest. Torment them a little bit, tease them a little bit about their enlightenment, their antiquated knowledge, their ancient wisdom, their connection to the old world, their connection to the source. Pool of water. By the way, for the pool of water, if you want to know more on that one, the Historia project, the Historia Illius Itineris, it means the story of the journey, is the esoteric arm of the metaphors of movement work. In the tarot trump section, where we analyze the symbolism of the tarot, it's not about divination and fortune telling. There's a whole section on there about pools of water and what that represents. The same archetype is expressed from antiquity of various goddesses of ancient Egypt. You'll see the same archetype being expressed in bottled mineral water. If you noticed, it's not just bottled water, it's mineral water. It's healthy, it's fresh, it's straight from the source of the spring. It's this fountain of all purity is a bottle of water in a plastic bottle. But it's mineral water, naturally sparkling. That's what this is. If you want to know more on that one, you're going to have to join the Historia, because it's quite in depth. And of course, I'm not going to give it away here because it needs the context of all the other stuff we're talking about. I'll put the link for that below as well.